Good morning. My name is Danny Harris, and I'm honored to be the Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives. We stand here as Transportation Alternatives and Families for Safe Streets because we hope for a better city, and we know that that better city is possible, and we're so grateful that Speaker Johnson could be here with us. And we're here because we believe, as you do, that it's important not just to break the car culture, but to use it as an opportunity to bring more opportunity for more New Yorkers. Millions of New Yorkers who are clogged on our freeways, who are stuck, who have to deal with the unsafety of our streets, and unfortunately, tragically, too many of the people behind us have suffered the consequences of our obsession and addiction to car culture. And they'll tell their stories today as we meet with over a dozen council members talking about the significance of your bill to bring not incremental but visionary change. Your Streets Master Plan bill will bring not, again, incremental, but visionary progress to the city. 50 miles of protected bike lanes a year, over 30 miles of bus lanes, and also working to bring more ADA accessibility to all New Yorkers. So for that, we are incredibly grateful for your leadership, we're grateful for your support, and we stand with you for the hope of a better New York tomorrow. And before I introduce the Honorable Speaker, I want to welcome Amy Cohen, who has been a tireless leader and advocate because she and her mother lost their beautiful son, their beautiful grandson, Sammy, on the streets of New York. And it's a tragedy, and still every day they fight for other New Yorkers, and it's an honor to have them here. And Amy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I stand before you today, and it's nearly 6 years since I buried my son. That means he's been dead half as long as we had him in our family alive. It is a heartache no family should ever have to endure. And yet New Yorkers are enduring it nearly every day. I stand with people who've lost children, brothers, mothers, fathers, siblings, parents. Last week we stood with Enzo Ferraccio's family, days after they lost their beautiful 10-year-old son. Our city is hemorrhaging lives. People are dying. People are suffering life-altering injuries and have lost the lives they've had before. This is an epidemic. And to date, we've been putting Band-Aids on this hemorrhaging epidemic. It is time we take bold steps forward. Bold steps to transform our city for people, for pedestrians, for cyclists, for people who need occasionally to get into a car, to keep everyone safe, to create a livable city for all New Yorkers, and to stop treating this like an accident.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everyone. We are here today outside of City Hall because our streets are in crisis, and New Yorkers are the one who are paying that price. And the price is paid by New Yorkers every day who are stuck on a slow-moving bus. It is paid by pedestrians and cyclists competing for space when it's cars that are actually the cause of congestion on our city streets. And of course, the price for our city's failure on this issue is paid most dearly by victims of traffic violence. And I want to thank Transportation Alternatives, Danny, welcome, and I want to thank Families for Safe Streets for their advocacy on this issue, their tireless advocacy, the strength and courage that is shown every single day, as Danny said, by people like Amy and the other families and loved ones who are standing here today. Their strength and courage never ceases to amaze me. And in a sense, I am here today to follow your example, the example that you all have shown day in and day out. You have turned unimaginable grief into an ever-growing movement. You demand not just words or thoughts and prayers for victims of traffic violence, you demand action, and that is what today is about. We will not fix our city streets with thoughts and prayers. We will fix our city streets with concrete, direct action by government, and that is what today is about. with smart urban planning that builds a New York City for the 21st century, smart urban planning that recognizes that transportation is a climate change issue, and reducing emissions must be part of every conversation about how we move people around New York City. And on the most basic level, to get really basic, I want a city where getting around doesn't make you insane. In fact, I don't think it's crazy to dream about a city where getting around is not just miserable, but maybe it's actually pleasant to get around New York City. We know how to get there. We need protected bus lanes. We need protected bike lanes. We need further pedestrianization to protect pedestrians across New York City. Other cities around the world are so far ahead of us on this issue. We have a lot of catching up to do, and catching up is something that we must do. And this bill is our attempt at a plan on how to get there. My bill, which calls for a master plan of our city streets, I think will get us there. It will revolutionize the way we plan our city streets. We'll do it comprehensively, and we'll do it holistically, and we'll do it in a way that prioritizes mass transit over private automobiles and people over cars. Last week, as Amy mentioned, many of us stood in the rain in Midwood, and I joined Families for Safe Streets in Brooklyn for a vigil for a 10-year-old boy who lost his life to traffic violence. His name, and we must say his name, was Enzo Ferraccio. And it broke my heart to stand there on such a tragic and gut-wrenching occasion, to see his parents standing there dealing with grief that no parent should have to withstand and go through. And at that event last week, I said that we are going to pass this bill. We are going to pass this bill for Enzo. We are going to pass this bill for Sammy. We are going to pass this bill for all of the people who have lost their lives to traffic violence, for Families for Safe Streets, for everyone who has lost a loved one or a friend, for everyone in our city who deserves a better way to get around. I made that promise last week, and I meant it, and I am so grateful to all of you from Families for Safe Streets and from Transportation Alternatives for what you are doing here today in support of this bill. I can't wait to celebrate with you when we actually pass it, when we set ourselves on a path to a streetscape that we all deserve in New York City. And I really just want to end with saying, this is not rocket science. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's been done in many places across the city successfully. It's been done in cities across the United States and across the world. It is really just a matter of leadership and doing the right thing and finally saying enough is enough. And that is what today is about. It's about reprioritizing our city streets and our sidewalks to help the most number of people and to prevent these needless and senseless tragedies and violence that occurs every single day on our streets. Vision Zero was a good start, but Vision Zero has to go further and further and further, and that is what this is about. It's about deepening our commitment in a real way with real benchmarks to prevent more lives from being lost. So I am grateful to all of you, and I look forward to passing this bill as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Pass the bill! 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 Pass the bill!
Speaker Johnson, you not only speak for us, you speak for millions of New Yorkers who, as you said, are seeking joy in their city, are seeking opportunity, are seeking real impact to things like climate change, to economic opportunity, and to having their kids, like mine, be able to thrive in this city, for our parents to be able to age in place in this city. Your leadership is an example, and I would say that yes, you are brave, but you are responding to the actual demands of real New Yorkers every day, and we're grateful for that. And together, We plan to help push the message both inside with your colleagues, but also to every borough and every neighborhood across New York. And so we thank you, and we just want to offer an opportunity for any questions, especially for the speaker, should you have any.
Why not consider raising the standards for protected bike lanes? Obviously, they're very weak right now. Why not raise them to say, hey, we're going to raise these off the curb and lay concrete instead of just vertical delineation as defined in your bill? Because vertical delineation doesn't work on Grand Street. It doesn't work all over the city. Those bike lanes are parking lots.
I'm open to that. It's a conversation that I'm happy to have as we continue to refine the bill. We want to do as much as we can to protect pedestrians and cyclists across New York City. And so this bill was building on the State of the City speech I gave in March, calling for municipal control of our subways and buses and saying that that needs a master plan of our city streets to go along with it. If there are places that we need to have these raised protected bike lanes, like on Grand Street, as you mentioned, if there are other places where we see current protected bike lanes are not working, that's what this is about. It's about deepening our investment. It's about learning what hasn't worked. It's about going further to protect as many people as possible. I am not wedded to a single idea. I'm wedded to getting it right. I'm wedded to making sure that whatever we have learned in these last few years, when Vision Zero got off the ground and when DOT first started installing these protected bike lanes, almost a decade ago, that we keep building on that commitment and what we've learned. So I am open to hearing suggestions and feedback. We've been working with advocates. Christine Berthet is texting me every day with updates to the bill. So I am open to figuring out what's going to work as part of this process.
Quick follow, what are you going to do when community groups come and sue you for taking away their parking spots? How are you going to try and preempt that?
This is about saving lives.
Well, but let's stick on the parking for 1 second, because as you know, tonight there's a group of people in Fort Greene who are complaining about parking. There's a lawsuit on Central Park West complaining about the removal of on-street car storage for bike lanes. What do you say to those people who say that parking is one of the rights of being a New Yorker?
Well, I've talked about this before. I believe Brian Lair asked me about it last month, and I said, well, we need to make upgrades to our city streets for bike lanes, for further pedestrianization, for bus lanes. That is going to mean that we're going to have to remove some parking spaces, and that is the appropriate thing to do. And so we cannot allow private automobiles to be prioritized over the lives of New Yorkers that are trying to get around in a safe way. That is what it's about. It's about showing leadership and saying it is time to reorient our priorities, and that's what we're going to do.
How about congestion?
You at the press? No. Okay, let's go to the press first.
What are your thoughts on the e-bike and e-scooter bill? And because a lot of people say they can't bike, they're not fit enough to bike around the city, and that's unfair to take away parking. They can't ride a bike. But a lot of people say that e-bikes are something that could kind of ease the barrier and have people who are maybe older or not as fit ride longer distances. Are you supportive of that legislation? It was passed in the state, but hasn't been signed by the governor yet.
You know, I think we need to legalize the bikes for workers in New York City. We do need justice for those workers who are, many of them are immigrants. They are working very difficult jobs, and having $500 fines and their bike seized is, I think, inappropriate and not the best way to use NYPD resources or city resources. So I think legalizing those bikes, I think, makes sense. I think the e-scooters is a different conversation. I've talked about my concerns on e-scooters. I think there are concerns about mixing in bike lanes. If you have an e-scooter that goes faster than a cyclist pedaled bike on its own, there are concerns around that. And I think the bill eliminated the use of those scooters in Manhattan and talked about finding other areas in the 4 boroughs to regulate them. We are looking at that. The governor first has to sign it, and then there's a period where it will go into effect. So the council is going to have to come up with and look at regulations on those e-scooters, and other boroughs will have a hearing on it. We'll go through the process. We'll talk about it. We'll meet with advocates. I'm sure we'll talk with the folks that are standing behind me about what their thoughts on it are. So we'll go through that process. I had concerns, and it was mostly a safety concern for the people that were riding the e-scooters themselves in heavy Manhattan traffic. If it was someone that was visiting from out of town or may not be that mobile, if they fell off an e-scooter or were in the middle of traffic, they could get severely injured themselves if they didn't know how to work it properly. So that is what the basis of my concerns were on e-scooters, and I'm sure we'll work through that process as we have to go into the council looking at rules around e-scooters.
And just to follow up on the bill, I mean, what's the holdup in your mind? You're the council speaker.
I think you'll see movement soon. As Clayton asked a question on the type of bike lanes, we're working through all of these individual issues. We want to get this right. So we are literally going through line by line, looking at what we're talking about for pedestrians, looking about the benchmarks that we've put in place. I am totally committed to the bill. It's my bill, but we want to get it done correctly, and that is what this has been about.
You're going over line by line with the administration, because you know the DOT testified against at least the larger aspects of this bill.
We go through every bill with the administration.
Right.
That's how it works. And we're not caving to anything the DOT is saying where they don't want certain things. We literally are working with them, as we do with the law department, with the Department of Transportation, with City Hall. That happens on thousands of people's 1,000 pieces of legislation every single year, and that's what we're doing here.
Could you pass the bill in your own conference right now without a negotiation?
I think so, but that's not how we do things. That's not practice. That's not how we.
But your introduction was very passionate about the need to do this urgently and boldly. Could you not
First, we're doing it urgently.
Okay.
We want to get it right. I'm standing here today with these advocates and families, and I will handle it in a prudent, responsible, thoughtful way, which includes negotiation. That is what always happens. That's what happened on the speed camera legislation. That's what happened on all the bills that we've passed, on the Idaho Stop bill. Every bill we do that on. This is no different than any other Safe Streets bill that we've handled. Any other questions?
Well, you talk about in the bill pedestrianization, a lot of shared streets. You're talking about a dozen shared streets. What about, you talked earlier about Europe, is way ahead of us. I know a couple of reporters here have just come back from Europe and found it amazing that in the heart of European cities there are dozens, if not scores, of streets that are literally pedestrianized, that cars cannot go on. Is anything in the bill going to do something about that in New York City?
We're looking at that. You know, I think there could be an opportunity. I talked about, I believe in my State of the City address, looking at, and we'd have to go through a process because every area has nuances to it, and you want to engage the community but not give them veto power, as I talked about. Could you pedestrianize Bedford in Brooklyn? Could you pedestrianize University Place just below Union Square? Could you pedestrianize these places? I mean, we wanted to pedestrianize University, and they did sort of one partial block just south of 14th Street between 13th and University. Where can we deepen that commitment? Where can we find the right place to do this? That is what this will be about. Okay.
I'm trying to get the folks up to meetings soon.
Great.
So
Thank you very much. Thank you all.